does being queer in hockey mean?
Being queer in hockey is a struggle.
There's something about being a goalie that's really satisfying for me, so making saves, like feeling the contact of the puck. I think also the social aspect of it, just being a part of a team and interacting with people as a team. There's an understanding that you have, a mutual understanding that you are teammates, and whether or not you like someone, you respect them, and that gets stronger as the years go on.
Growing up playing hockey obviously has been a huge part of my life. I actually grew up in Minnesota, so the self-proclaimed state of hockey. So grew up pretty much always playing either on ponds or playing organized hockey in a league. For context, I'm like 5'5". I probably was much shorter when I was in elementary school. So pretty scrawny kid playing hockey, like not your typical, not what you'd typically expect out of a hockey player. And obviously it kind of, it felt like almost, I don't know, impossible odds, like, you know, growing up in this family of these talented athletes, and then here I was just trying to play this sport and fit in.
I started playing hockey when I was about 3. I have an older brother and he played, and like most other girls about my age, we all got into it because it's something that our brothers were doing. There wasn't a lot of girls hockey. There weren't any girls teams, especially in the Detroit area at that time. So for me, it was just, I wanted to be like my older brother, and he played hockey. I also played football because he played football. So it was less about hockey and more about wanting to be like my older brother when I was younger.
I grew up in a small town outside of Sudbury, Ontario. There was about 500 people in the town. And I live down the street from the arena, and actually I'm a stereotype. I'm like the traditional Canadian hockey kid. Like, I would go to the rink every day with my hockey bag, hoping that a team showed up without a goalie so I could jump on. And because of that, I got pretty good at hockey and moved on to play like AAA and junior and into major junior and eventually professionally. But yeah, the first time I questioned my sexuality, I was 6, and then I sort of suppressed it for a long time, and once I hit puberty, I began to question once again.
Certainly when I was in university, you know, the safe space to talk about your sexuality was on-campus resources. And you can imagine, as a varsity athlete on campus in a relatively small school at a high-profile sport, it's not the easiest thing to walk into your campus center and, you know, pull out your big rainbow flag and say, well, I'm gay.
Junior year of high school, a guy that was on the men's team was like, I see you for what you are. We're both trying to do this Division I thing. Let's just hang out every day. We'll stamp all the rumors out, and like, I've got your back. And so it was like this lovely beard situation where he just let me be me. And when I left my hometown, I never turned back.
I grew up in a pretty small town in Stouffville, Ontario. Not really too many LGBTQ plus role models, I would say, or lifestyles to look to. So I was, you know, I guess closeted until, you know, I graduated high school and went off to university. And it wasn't really something I'd realized in myself. I just kind of knew I was a little bit different. But I'm a goalie also, or was a goalie, so different is kind of in my DNA. I definitely buried it for a long time. Not on purpose, it was a subconscious thing. I just wasn't thinking about it, or I didn't understand why I didn't feel the same way as my friends about boys. And at some point I was watching a TV show, The 100, and there's a scene in season 2 where these 2 girls kiss, and I freaked out. That was such a pivotal moment for me in my identity, and it made me realize how important representation really is, whether that's in film, in literature, and especially in sports as well.
Prior to Anya, I didn't identify in a meaningful way with the LGBTQ community. I didn't understand why it was important or what it really meant. I just was frankly dismissive and thought, I don't need to be a part of a group, I am who I am. I didn't understand why those groups are important and how, to some people, that's the only safe place they have. And in telling my story and in being more open and honest, we've met a lot of people who have benefited from that. I have had a very pleasant experience in my coming out and feeling included and feeling welcomed. In the formerly NWHL, now PHF, I have always been a leader in the locker room. So that maybe has led to some of that being the culture of our team. We've just always had a team of good people.
When I think about especially male athletes coming out, like the courage that it takes them is something I probably wouldn't have been able to do without the support that I had. I mean, you are putting yourself out there and you're doing it knowing that you could lose everything.
Right now, I would never advise a young queer person to play hockey. I don't think it's a safe space for them. On the men's side, the women's side's a different space altogether, but on the men's side of the sport, I wouldn't advise for them to do it because I don't think it's safe. I think it will be a detriment to their well-being. I had a 15-year-old trans boy come to me a year or two ago who's cutting himself daily. And he was dealing with, body dysmorphia and a number of different issues. And he found bodybuilding and weightlifting. And when he felt really down, he'd go to the gym, and that became one of his tools to feel good. And I think for a lot of straight white boys in Canada, hockey is that tool. It's their escape. And in our culture, hockey, in Canadian culture, hockey is so deeply rooted and ingrained in our culture. It matters so much. It is Canadiana, in a sense. That hockey should have that feeling that trans boy had going to the gym. It should be the space that those kids are excited to go to escape from whatever struggles or trauma or anything they're going through in their lives. And currently it is not. In fact, it's the opposite. It's an oppressive space.
On the more tragic end, you see kids taking their lives because they're too afraid to come out or to, be accepted by their family, or they're worried that, their friends won't accept them, or their job, or, et cetera, et cetera.
By the age of 17, I was trying to take my life on a regular basis. I tried to die by suicide when I was in junior and major junior hockey a number of times, probably over 10. I was drinking heavily to numb it, to suppress it. And at this point, keep in mind, I'd also adhered to the norms within the culture. I acted like a cocky bro douchebag. I struggled a lot, I really did, and it was because I didn't feel like I could be me.
Created in 2015, reborn in 2021. Let's get ready to raise the W and drop the puck for season 7.
As much as we want to put all these qualifiers on sport, make it women's sport, at the end of the day, we want to create sports fans. And if you're a fan of hockey, there's no reason why you can't be a fan of women's hockey. And so I think the PHF taking the women's qualifier out of their name is a great step to say, you know, we just want to be hockey players. We want to be recognized as hockey players. Making a name change was important in order to implement that new inclusionary policy. And I think they did it now because we just signed a big contract, big deal with ESPN+. So implementing that name change before that was important, just to rebrand and then show our new selves to the world through television.
If it's an insignificant change like removing the W from the name, it's not something we should identify in our right either way, because we don't call it the National Men's Hockey League, the National Men's Soccer League. And so why we have to put female athletes in a box to begin with before we even create all the different spaces that need room. I think the change is a step in the right direction, and it will continue to make systemic change, and I'm proud of that. I think intrinsically women's sports is really LGBTQIA friendly, because we feel like we're seen, you know, as athletes. We so frequently feel like it's easier to see your teammates. And so when you see somebody that's gay in the locker room, you know who they are. They're your line mate. They're gonna go in the corner for you either way. But then Harrison wanted to come out. And so that sparked us having conversations. And while there was no challenge, it made us think more critically, like, how do we talk about this? How do we educate people? How do we give people resources? And adding resources to women's hockey is a fabulous thing, because it's super untouched and it's very much a sponge. And so I think that was one of the times that I really felt the tide turning.
You know, the first thing is to educate yourself. And you could educate yourself by, you know, reading resources or going to not-for-profit websites. And you can also educate yourself by just having honest conversations with your friends that may be part of the community. And then moving forward, like I said, if you are fortunate enough to be in a position of privilege or power, whether it's, you know, in a group of 5 or in a group of 500, making that conscious effort to create a safe environment. I think that the more we realize that our similarities outweigh our differences, the better off we all become for it. A good reaction for a parent to have is recognizing that in that moment that their child is sharing this piece of important and identifying information with them, that it's not about the parent, it's about their kid. And in order to support their kid, they might not know how, and that's okay, because you can't just know how to support people. What's important is that they ask how they can support them.
Words matter, and for people who aren't comfortable with who they are, they're damaging, and for people, even people who are comfortable with who they are, it's hurtful. So I think that if people can educate themselves on words to use and not to use, and why those words that you shouldn't use are hurtful or damaging to members of a variety of communities, that's a step in the right direction to see positive change.
Being complacent is being complicit to the issues. And we need to stand up and be anti-racist. We need to be anti-homophobia. We need to be anti-misogyny. We need to be anti-ableism, and the list goes on and on and on. But it's going to take standing up and engaging with folks and humanizing issues and then educating them. You know, what are you actually doing to tangibly shift culture and to be an ally or an inclusive member of society? What are you doing to stand up when your friends say something or do something that is falls under the guise of, you know, being prejudiced towards a, you know, protected group? When we start doing that, that's how we can tangibly shift.
Hockey is just one of those spaces, it feels like, that has been, that has grown specifically around white folks, around straight folks, around men. Like, all of that together is just kind of like, that's hockey, and that's how it's kind of expanded and grown. So to say like that some specific rule or some scenario could happen and hockey would be perfect or fixed, like, I wish that were the case. I wish we just snapped a finger and like hockey was for everyone. But change doesn't happen like that. Change takes time, change takes effort. Sometimes you gotta take like 2 steps forward, or it takes 4 steps backward to like move in any direction. And change like that is hard. Like social change is really challenging.
What the NHL does and what sports leagues do is like having the parade before winning the cup. You don't have the parade in September during training camp. You haven't won anything. You haven't eradicated homophobia or even made it relatively safe for queer folks to be in the sport. What the fuck are you celebrating?
To be queer in sports and to be queer in hockey for me specifically is feels very powerful.